Okay, so hello
Mhm.
and Zoisa here. So I'm here and I'd like to introduce Crystal. So we're going to be talking about men's health and their well-being, in particular in relation to the male mindset, as well as their attitudes towards health, common issues, and changes to men's healthcare. I met Crystal quite a few years ago, back 2019. We met on a Touch for Health course. And I love the way that her mind works and also her interest in health and well-being, and also kind of like the mind psychology. And I thought she does quite a lot of work with men as well. So she would be a great person to talk to. So first of all, welcome, Crystal.
Thank you. Nice to be
Um,
here.
would like to tell us a little bit more about you.
I can, yeah. So I suppose in terms of working with men, I've worked with men in criminal justice mainly since for like 15 years. So kind of a lot around addiction and impact on life and well-being, really, on how their relationships are, how they kind of show up to the world, and the pressures and the anxieties that they've experienced on that journey, really. So it's been enlightening for 15 years, and also really kind of interesting to see how men juggle things differently to women. And I think that's really interesting in terms of how we can work with them as well, within health and social care and wellbeing services. I think it adds a new kind of dimension to what we can provide.
And what is it particularly that interested you, and how did you kind of get into wanting to do more and know more in terms of the whole health and well-being?
Do more, do more, and know more. I think I've always had an interest in health, and I somehow landed in criminal justice and working with those who have been convicted of various different crimes. But I suppose my passion's always been in that kind of fitness and movement and the wellness and the health side of stuff. I started off as doing some physiotherapy kind of things and occupational therapy, and on my journey I kind of come back into that point, and the way I seem to work now is very holistically, and I'm a true believer in looking at the trauma that we've suffered, and how that's really impacted our health and our choices, and what availability we have to access services, and also where our mindset is at in terms of doing that, whether we feel that we deserve to do it, or what our role is in society as to whether we choose to go and kind of look after ourselves in that way, or whether we kind of just keep plowing on through and hope that things will be okay and put it to the back of our minds. So I think as I've kind of gone through this journey, I've really discovered that sometimes actually I've discovered a real passion for men, actually, in the sense that sometimes I think in terms of the way I work with them is they kind of get the lesser end of the deal at times, and it's very kind of blaming often, kind of like in terms of the stronger sex, the kind of women do things differently. And I've often found that in terms of advocation and kind of really supporting guys to go through, like, let's look at all aspects of your life. Like, we're not just looking at when I'm working in probation offending behaviour, we're looking at your health, we're looking at your mindset, we're looking at your goals and your passions and your identity, and really then kind of amalgamating that, so to kind of give this empowerment to some sense of kind of knowing who I am as a man, and what my role is in my world, what my role is in my family, where my boundaries are, and kind of being able to be vulnerable, to be whatever I want to be at a given moment in time, without that fear of, if I cry, I'm seen as weak, or if I go and do this, then I'm seen as like a pansy. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, actually, just to go and do what you need to do without fear of the judgments and the repercussions from others in your world and in society. So yeah, I get like quite passionate around that. Like, yeah, in terms of men as victims as well, I think it's such a big kind of can that is really not not opened at all. So I like to open it. It's worth opening.
I think that, you know, the fact that you have a passion and really want to work with men, I think is fantastic, because actually there needs to be more people working with men. It's very common, like in social media and news and in articles, we often see lots of information about women and women discussing their health issues. And also women have that opportunity often with friends, where they can discuss, and that's kind of seen as normal to discuss kind of what's going on, how you are. And it's very different in terms of men and their experience, and then just kind of pulling together the kind of issues to do with kind of men's health in myself this month. It was just really staggering and really interesting to find out that, well, actually the wellness industry is worth like $4.2 trillion according to the Global Wellness Institute, and then the female just kind of like health therapeutic industries are worth kind of $41.2 billion compared with actually men's, which is actually valued higher. So, you know, their value is kind of 47.5 billion, and actually it's growing. So I feel that that's good, because actually it's the idea that actually, yeah, it is important for men to take care of themselves, but at the same time it does feel like that sense of the thing that's portrayed is, you know, I am clean shaven, is like, is my skin good when I'm having a shave? And it's just like, can we forget about that outside experience and expression? It's like they have to look like this. There is that macho, and it's like, what are some of the basic things that they need to be able to kind of get a hold of? And that's like, well, when they're growing up, it's like, are they able to express themselves? Do they feel comfortable? What actually does it mean to be a male, and what are the attitudes, you know, of men? Because actually we're grown by our experiences in and our peers, and as you were saying, very often that male stereotype is that you know, the go-getter, breadwinner, provider, security, strong, resilient, sexual, in control. But yet, you know, there are some men who, you know, they feel really comfortable in that role, which is great. And then you get some that are like, well, that's just not really me. It's like, I like to be the nurturer. I'm more of the caretaker. You know, well, what about their ability to ask for help or support and assistance without feeling they've done something wrong? And also the avenues for them to be able to discuss or even talk about those things. I know that one of the things that you've mentioned is, again, the facilities. So it's like, how have you found it different in terms of men's approach? How do they view when you kind of like get to them, and for whatever offense, it's like they still need to be rehabbed. We all need to be rehabbed, and it's almost like not just a case of fixing, like you say, that thing that has been the trigger or the thing that's got them to where they are. It's like, let's look at the whole person. What have you found in terms of your experience of the facilities available to assist and support them, and also how they're kind of on board?
I found it really interesting, because I think, as you kind of said, you know, we're geared up to provide services for women quite often, in terms of that victim kind of role. And for me in my work, I mean, I now kind of really put it over to a lot of the people who I train and talk to, and also men who I work with, that actually, why do we make this assumption that the man is a perpetrator of something in terms of crime, or in terms of their idolations or expectations, and the women are victims? That's not to say they're not, but what I know and what I've seen for so many years is that every single man who I've worked with is a victim in some way, and he doesn't like to see himself as a victim quite often. And some of the work like I do with these men is around kind of saying, okay, let's look at what has come before. Like, let's strip everything back, because at the moment we see this whole drama, we see this story, we see like the exterior. And there's a really good book actually called The Mask of Masculinity, and it looks at the different masks that specifically men in this book portray. And we all wear masks, we absolutely do. Like, I know I could go to an office job and be one Crystal, and I come home and I'm a completely different Crystal, and it's that safety realm. And I think sometimes we can be so narrow-minded and naive to the point that men don't have that. Like, if men are loud and aggressive, it's because they have issues with alcohol, or they have attitudes which are detrimental to women. Yes, maybe they do, but well, why? Because I would guarantee most people do not wake up in the morning and think, today I'm going to be an absolute asshole to her. Or same as me waking up, it's like, I don't wake up and think I'm going to be an absolute bitch to my husband. So if I was really bitchy to him, is that what people think? No, they just think, well, no, maybe she's hormonal, maybe she's this, maybe she's that. There's always a reason. Whereas if a man wakes up and like it's like that or whatever, it's he's this, he's aggressive, he's abusive, he's manipulating, he's coercive. And I really struggle with that concept, because I think, no, like, why do we make that assumption? But then at the same time, as a mother of two boys, I'm very aware that that is the assumption that's made. So if my 12-year-old is told no, and he, I know, told, don't pick up the dog, and he continues to pick up the dog, both me and my husband are very much aware, like, no means no. Where do we, like, where's the line on this? No means no. She's growled at you. She doesn't want to do it. So even at 12, and I have a 10-year-old also, we're still in this kind of worldly view, aren't we, of if something happens when he's older and he can't read the signals and something else, he could absolutely be accused of some horrendous things. But how, and as a parent, like, the world's ever changing. So what would have happened when I was a child? Again, like, it's a different world that we live in now, and kids grow up so fast, and they're doing things at 12, and you're thinking, you know, God, like, did that happen when I was 12? I don't, maybe it did, I don't know. But I think maybe we change as well, don't we, in how we perceive it. But ultimately, like, I think we start to look, don't we, at that nurturing. Like, what is the story? Why did I wake up and decide to be horrible to my husband? Like, what's my stuff if I was going to do that? But that's exactly the same for every man. Like, what's his stuff? What is this thing? If he's coercive and he's abusive and he's controlling, why? Like, what's the story? There has to be a purpose in there somewhere, and there's something that's, in my view, broken and traumatized, and childhood kind of stuff, family stuff, whatever it is. It really makes no difference on the outset, because all people see is the behavior. And what I'm always so interested in is what's okay, cool, that's what it is, I don't really care. Like, I literally am like that. I'm like, do you know what, that's your offense, or that's what's going on. I don't care about that part. What I really care about is what's underneath it, because until we know that stuff, we can't then start to address anything. And if we can address it, then we can start looking at, okay, what's the bigger picture for you? Like, what do you want in life? What is the stress? What is the mental health? What is the health problem that you've been avoiding for like two years? Like, you know, and even just thinking, actually, for my husband just had a hernia operation. So, and I think this is a classic, and I don't know, maybe some of your listeners will disagree, or maybe they'll completely resonate. He went just before lockdown, had this kind of appointment, and had and he's like, oh, I've got a hernia, gone to the doctors. And I said something to him, oh, how long has that been there? He's like, oh, probably about a couple of years. I was like, a couple of years, John? And he said, yeah. And I was like, why haven't you, well, A, said anything, or B, gone and done anything about it sooner? He was like, oh, you know, I was just working and just busy, just never got round to it. And I think that's really telling. And I know we can all do that, male, female alike. But, you know, it was just kind of like, meh. whatever. And actually he had his surgery and it turned out he had 2 hernias in there, and he's been in quite a lot of pain throughout the whole of lockdown, like in terms of being able to exercise. That's called pain. So it's kind of a learning lesson as well, isn't it? Like actually we can kind of go, yeah, it's all right, it'll be all right. When it gets really bad, I'll go and sort it out. And then a lockdown comes and you're a year later sorting it out because there's no surgery. But in the meantime, other areas suffer. So you can't do as much exercise, which does impact your health, your physical health, your mental health, your well-being, how you kind of show up to the kids, how you show up to your partners, how, all the stuff that we have to do. But at the time, it's really easy just to negate it, isn't it? Just go, yeah, nah, it'll be fine. Don't worry about it.
And I would say it's that for me, I don't have kids. I have my husband, but and then I think of my brother, and actually it is a case of just ignore it, and it's like everybody has a different tolerance, I would say, but it's like we've all got physiologically, it's like same systems, hormones running around us, and if it was a car, that's one of the things I tend to think of. I'm like, my husband, it's like, how does that work? What do I need to do? The oil needs changing, so he'll be on the ball. This light is going off on the dashboard, let me research and read up about that. So kind of great when it comes to that. And it's just like, but what about your own body? And it almost seems like that as you're growing up as a female, it's like got to look after yourself, and on the one hand, yes, that's important, but it's almost like you have to look after yourself, either for its own, so that I can do what I love to do and enjoy myself, or you've got that other kind of portrayal, which is I've got to look after myself and look my best so that I can then attract a man, which is like a whole nother kettle of fish. But it's almost like, at what point as young males grow, is that embedded, we need to help you look after yourself. It's like when you fall over and you're little, as a parent, it's just like you're there to comfort and support, but there's a time frame. I was particularly listening to one gentleman on YouTube talking about men's health, and just as a father, it's like what do we teach boys about manhood? And it's like, they come to us when they were 5 and they're crying, and it's like, well, if the male, it's just like, what are you crying about? Why are you crying? What happened? What do you want to do? It's like question, bombardment. Whereas if it's a girl, it's like hug, cuddle, comfort. And if from that young age, boys don't cry or man up about it, if we've already got these languages and these phrases, or you don't actually see a male role model actually caring for themselves. So whether it's caring because they're well groomed and taking pride in their appearance, or it's caring for another person and the self, or even having those conversations, I definitely think that it's important to start to kind of flex that muscle of that being able to themselves and care, and actually discover more about, well, what does that mean to me? And I think the other part of it is where can they go? Who can they approach?
Definitely.
They may want to, maybe females can be more understanding, not always. Who is that male that I can go to? Actually loads of different men's sheds. I know that's kind of popped up, so it gives an opportunity to do again man stuff. There's that thing again, woodwork or whatever, and it's like, but it's creating those different environments and strategies. And when you're young, you have like your sport is often a way for creativity, for men to kind of, or boys to kind of get together and have that relationship. But again, it's not spoken about. In terms of being able to kind of recognize and see what their self-care attitudes are like, and what strategies and where they can go. particularly once they've kind of left your realm, what are some of the coping strategies or techniques that you've discovered are really helpful that men are like, yeah, feel more empowered by?
Good question. I love that. There's so many things that you just said. My brain's just gone, wow. I think the key things with men, which I think is so interesting, is as women, if we're sat there talking about, and as therapists, you know, we're doing all this stuff. And I know I've been places, and I'm like, well, men really do appreciate mindfulness. Men really do appreciate a forum to be vulnerable. And it's often not necessarily like kind of pushed away, but it's like, well, do they really? And I'm like, I usually come back, I'm like, hand on heart, I'm the person in my kind of criminal justice world who'll go, okay, stop, feet on the floor, sit up straight, lower your gaze, let's breathe. And my God, like, what a revelation for some of these guys. And I find I'm so honored sometimes just to have that opportunity, because some of the people I work with, they haven't had any of that experience. They don't have any role model. They may have been in and out of kind of some really awful situations, but they're like, oh my God, I didn't realize that I could breathe, and now I feel okay. And you're like, yes. And I'm thinking of one particular man who he was quite high on his ADHD, and he came in, he's absolutely wired, absolute anxiety galore, really anxious, kind of really struggling with his weight, struggling with who he was and his concept of himself, alcohol, kind of relationships, a lot. He lost parents, you know, it was quite a lot. And he was always just coming in wired. And in the end I was like, all right, okay, like, stop, let's breathe. And I did a breath work with him, which would be to send you to sleep. And he was like, oh my God, like, I feel like totally, and he started yawning. And he was like, I heard about all this rubbish before, but I never actually thought it worked. And he'd never had opportunity to experience it. And just by that one experience, he was like, oh my goodness. And like, what a tool. Like, we all breathe, don't we? Like, when we are like in our heads, and we need to get out of our heads, and we need to get down into our hearts and just into our body, like, oh my gosh, we could just breathe. We could just breathe. And he really, really took to that. And I've had like various different cases where actually men want to know this stuff. They want to come and do the yoga. And I mean, there was a time I was going to set up a man only yoga, because I kind of had a couple of men in a few classes, and they were only man essentially. And I don't think it really makes a difference. Like, how do we feel if we're the only female in a room of men? I don't think whether you're male or female, it makes a difference. If sometimes when you feel outnumbered, you do feel outnumbered. And men's yoga is different to women's yoga. Men have different movements. So there is an absolute need. Like, I don't know anywhere around here that has a men's only yoga class. The hope, I'm sure there is some, but is that men's yoga class going to be the one that's just like the Ashtanga yoga, which is like really beefy and you're going to sweat a lot, which is not, don't get me wrong, that's my style of yoga. But also there is that element of, what about the down regulation? Like, what about the parasympathetic? What about the calming? What about the, oh my God, I have such a stressful job, like being the breadwinner, like doing all that stuff, working the long hours to get the nice holidays, to feed the kids, to look after my partner who doesn't work full time or whatever, to pay the bills. Like, where's your time? Really, like, where's your time? And I think that's such a missing thing in society, that deserving that time that isn't down the pub. Like, oh, I'm off down the pub, that's my social time. Awesome, have that. But where's your time for your like internal like retrospection and your internal time to kind of think, oh gosh, actually my week's been really, really busy and I haven't had time to even think about something that means something to me. Like, I'm just go, and I'm stressed. And as we know, men really are a high proportionality of heart disease and heart attacks. Like, the stress and the pressure, and then coupled with that lack of self-care and time,
is massive. You know, it's really massive in terms of a movement which I really feel that should be out there, like should be coming through. And you know, I just think, just on your second note around children and how do you teach them? When someone has the answer to that, I'd love them to tell me. I mean, I think as you were saying that, I think I always relate it back to my children and obviously my situation. And then I was thinking about my husband. He's not particularly he's not like a moisturizer kind of person. He just like, he's not a builder, but he's like what you imagine, like the stereotypical builder type. Get up, get dressed, have a coffee, go to work type thing. And that, like, but not necessarily do his whole face and take care and all that kind of stuff. He just doesn't have that sense of need. Like, he doesn't care if his hair's a mess. Whereas I'm like, your hair's a mess. So already we have our own values, don't we? Of like, he's like, and I'm like, but your hair's a mess. So then here I am as a mother with my son going to school. I'm like, you haven't done your hair. And he's like, I don't want to do my hair. And I'm like, you need to do your hair. But, so I'm like, and then his dad's there taking him to school, and I'm like, what's going on? Like, are you doing your hair? Is anyone doing your hair? And you kind of like in that to and fro, like, because it's important, obviously, to look after ourselves. Granted, is it important to do your hair? Probably not. Is it important to clean your teeth? Yes, like to most people. And they don't care about cleaning their teeth. They're 12 and 10. And I say to them every day, yeah, have you really? And they're like, yes. And I'm like, I'm going to check. And like, do you know what I mean? And I often say, this is 12 years of morning and night cleaning your teeth. It's not new. So I set myself on a bit of a challenge to ask men that I knew in my life. And I said to my brother, did you clean your teeth when you were like 10, 11, 12, 13? And he's like, probably not really. And I was like, really? And he's like, yeah, probably not. And like, in terms of we are a big hockey playing family. So I was asking like the lads at hockey, and they're like, I was like, how is it? And again, does it come down to my values? I don't know. But how is it okay not to clean your teeth? Because your breath will smell, and then you'll have fillings, and like the implications are greater than just not gelling your hair to go to school. So I think we have this really fine line that if you have a father, like my kids have a father who like, I don't really care what people think of me. I'm okay in who I am. Then, yeah, do they get that role model that does like wash your face every night? And, you know, they're getting to teenage years. My eldest is getting quite spotty. He's also got ADHD and he's hypersensitive. So what a challenge, because I can't get that kid to wash his face because he doesn't want anything on it. Everything's, it makes his skin crawl. But his pores are blocked. So, and although I think that's a really simple kind of teenage thing, how much of that is instilled then for the rest of life? So therefore, the men that we see who are, 30, 40, 50, 60, where does it ever change? Do you ever grow out of that? And where do you then begin to learn it? Because I don't know, surely there is a point at some point that they say you can't teach an old dog new tricks, right? I don't think that's true at all. But it's like, when does it come to a point where someone says, do you know what? I now need to look after my house.
Yeah.
And my theory is around that is with the guys who have come to yoga and they're like 50 odd, 55, 60. Same as women actually coming into yoga classes. Actually, you needed to be doing this when you were 20 because that's how you're going to have the movement. That's how you're going to have that ability just to have like your telomeres grown and lengthened, your lifespan and all your genealogy changes and stuff like that. Yeah, it's such a dilemma, I think, in terms of how we start to do we give it to them at school, or
yeah. I mean,
when does it come in?
You have the health education and kind of PE and physical, but I think it's almost like the other piece of the puzzle is It's like understanding, it's like, well, why is that important? And I think definitely I remember as a child, it's just like you could tell me something and it was like I'd either want to take that information on board or I'm like, meh, whatever. And it's not until you get older that you're like, oh, I wish I'd listened to this. If I know now, as I'm approaching my 50s, if I had this information kind of 20 years ago, I'm like, I'd be much better on my body. But I think also in our environment and world around us, it's almost like the common signals of this is your body telling me help, I need support, and things, proactively, this is what you can do about it. The more that we have more people talking about it so that it's part of that everyday conversation, the better. There's more and more, I think, schools, sometimes not until they get to kind of GCSE stage, some doing kind of meditations, which I think is a great opportunity to discover how, okay, this is another way to be. And it's like, understand what the benefits are for you. It's like, do you need to care for yourself? Because if you're a kind of like, well, I really don't know, and whatever, kind of go with the flow, it's like, that's okay. But when you really want something, how, you then have to kind of muster, focus, challenge. There are all those skills that I feel you want to know. And the great thing is that actually now June is actually, there's a men's health week within June, to get men to understand about these are the things that you need to be aware of as you're kind of approaching kind of 20s, 30s. Do you regularly check your penis? What is your health like? Testicles. We have our boob check. It's like, check the guys. Learning, what are the differences? Is this normal texture or sensation or color for your skin? Can you breathe deeply? Do you know how to breathe deeply? What are the things that make you excited, make you passionate, to help adrenaline going? Is there an outlet? Do you have that opportunity to express those things? And I think it also varies depending on ethnicity and culture. It was interesting listening to Afro-Caribbean man, and he was talking about hairdressers and actually the important role, this was kind of based in America, of the black hair salon. And that's the place where they don't necessarily need to have a haircut, but the guys that all congregate and they would talk about their health and, oh, I've got high blood pressure, or this came up, or my wife was talking to me about that. But that was an environment where it didn't matter how you looked. You were taking that opportunity to get together, talk about what was going on, and also exchange ideas. So as a small boy, it's like he went in with his dad. So it's like that was the environment. And I think such a cool idea that some of the hairdressers then took it upon themselves to go, well, okay, if we know men congregate here, then, how about we have like a drive, or, we'll take their blood pressure, or just, it's like, if you're out there and you happen to see this video and you're offering a service that predominantly men use, it's like, that's your opportunity to kind of drop in, because they might not have had that information else.
Definitely.
Going back to the simple things like breathing. I mean, great that if you've got kind of like some of the fitness watches, they have that monitor where you can just go, okay, breathe, take time for yourself and check in to yourself.
I would say, how often do we do that? Because I had one, and I've had a million apps, and then I had my iWatch, which I don't actually wear anymore, but it would ding at me and I'd go, oh, that's time to breathe, and then I'd just move on. Or it would say to you, you've been sat down too long, stand up. And I'd be like, oh, I can't stand up, I need to carry on going. Or I'd get an app because I was trying to be really conscious of it, and it would ding, and in the end it just got annoying because it kept dinging at me. But so I guess that all these things are there, aren't they? And then but we're so happy to override them, because like we always tick the boxes, because we're like, I'm looking after my house, I've got myself this app. And then you're like, yeah, but I just ignored it for the next 3 months, and then I wonder why I'm still, and I'm going to try another one now, you know. And you think, well, oh, okay, if I guess it's what does it matter to us that much, or are we then essentially kind of just go, yep, like I said, ticking the boxes because they say I should breathe a bit more. Okay, I can breathe a bit more. Look, I've got an app. Like, it's the perfect excuse, isn't it? Or justification, or it's the conversation stopper. Well, I am doing it because I've got my app now. So therefore it's all good.
Yeah.
And, you know, and I think, I'm not saying that's like, not everybody. I think people do it. Like, they have the app and it really works for them. But sometimes I find that the ones who really need it are the ones who are kind of like, yeah, I've done that part. It didn't work for me. Or, you know, I haven't got time for that. Or I think a lot, when you do like Shavasana and yoga or mindfulness stuff, and they're like, no, I can't do that because my brain's everywhere. Or they're really fidgety. They're the ones I love. Like, or the fidgety, and they're like, I can't do it. And I'm like, that's why you need it, because you're not meant to be able to do it. Like, you wouldn't run a marathon just off the back of it because you could. You train for it. And your mind is no different. Your body's no different. Like, it takes practice and commitment and consistency and all those things time and time again. So some of it's that kind of what we're doing for ourselves and what we're doing because society says, you need to be aware of this. And I think we do need to be aware of it. But I question, how can we make it more like meaningful? Like, how's it real for people? Until they get to 60 and something's knocking on the door and they think, oh God, if only I'd done that then, or if only I'd checked this part of me, maybe this wouldn't be the case now.
Yeah. It's that you know, I think a good analogy I thought of the other day was, I think we are, and our bodies are just so amazing. It's just like they have this buffer zone, and they will, you know, our body will, and everything will keep us going until there's a bust point or a collapse point, or then it's like dis-ease, and it's like the signals will get louder and louder until it's like you will just be flattened. So it's just like, and then some people take note and some people won't take note, but it's almost it's like, whilst yes, there are times that we need to, for, you know, I have to look after my wife or my kids, so it's like I can hear the signals, but it's like I'm having to override it. But when is that, like you say, that opportunity to really come back to self-care? And it is learning that actually it is important to care for myself. Nobody else is, you know, nobody else can do that. I can be shown it, and I can have, actually, when I'm little, I need somebody else to do that for me. But there comes self-responsibility time where it's just like, okay, and I think a lot of that is our societies. We're not, I would say, particularly in the UK, there are other countries. America, I think, is a bit more geared up, maybe, in terms of having a structure of, I'm geared up to care for myself. There's, you know, there's access to the services or my work hours, and I think that's changing a little bit more. But it's like society is geared up so that you can operate within a system where self-care is fundamental.
Absolutely. There's
the resources to be able to self-care. You know, like I know you were saying, we had a conversation another time, and it's like, in terms of abuse or victims, particularly with physical or sexual abuse, often women are the things are thought of, but actually men do experience that. But then you happen to be that man who is have gone tick tick, I'm aware and I want to do something about it. It's like, I need to, where is the accessibility? It's just like, well, it's 100 miles away.
Yeah, it's so true. I was having a conversation with a lady the other day, actually, and I was kind of saying what I do in terms of working with men, and often many of those men are either have kind of pornography addictions or kind of relationship problems, really, where often, like you say, that tapping on the door thing, actually it's been rough for a long time, or the pornography stuff has been going on, but it's only then come to a head, and then they've gone, oh God, and then everything's lost. But the question, and she's like, I didn't know people like you did work with men. And I was like, yes. And she said, I really didn't know. I really didn't know there was a service at all that men could go to and get support around their trauma, around their relationships, around their abusive behavior, around their need for control, and that what's going on for them. And I was like, there absolutely is. And she was like, I have no idea. And she's in quite an abusive relationship, which is why she was talking to me. And she's like, I just didn't know. I did not know. I don't know how he'd take that opportunity, but he wouldn't know it's there either. And I think it's sad in some ways, because actually I don't want to work with men in the criminal justice system. The men, I've got some men I have worked with outside of that, but they're the ones that need this service, because you don't want to get that knock on the door that has got so far that something has happened in your relationship or in your personal life or whatever that has meant that somebody else has got hurt, or children have been impacted, or your life's just like literally just shattered in front of you. And I think it's really difficult to be able to relay that, because we never think it's going to happen to us. We think we're okay until we're not. And I think that's a big kind of, element of all of this. But when you're saying about the kind of putting yourself first, there's a speaker called Simon Sinek. I don't know if you've heard of any of his work, and he speaks a lot. He's amazing in terms of his knowledge and his literature, but he has this thing called the golden circles, and essentially it looks at the why, the how, and the what, and how, like, a lot of services, he puts it in context of outside services. So like, you'll go somewhere and say, this is what I've got, this is how we do it, and then the last thing they tell you is why, by which point you don't really care. Like, you just want to see like the glamorous bits on the outside. And then so what he acknowledges is that Apple in particular are a different business that come from the inner circle out. So they'll tell you in their adverts and their kind of marketing why you need this. So it's all like touched on the emotions, all about why you need it, what difference it's going to make to your life, and how great that's going to change things around for you. And then they tell you how they do it with all like whatever bits they tell you. By the time they tell you to what the product is, you don't care, because you really want it, because you've already got the emotional attachment. So within that, I tend to like this technique I use with a lot of my clients is self-team task, in the same concept. So you have yourself in the center and the team around you, and the task is the outside bit. So in the world, we're all focused on our task. I need to go to work, I need to get money, I need to take the car to the garage, I need to do this, need. The team around us, whether that's our colleagues, whether that's our family, whatever, they're like the second part. So they almost are like byproduct, like they're in amongst the pigeons. But the key thing is like that task has to be finished, and I don't care how I speak to people to get it done, or who doesn't get my attention, and who I'm not there emotionally for, and etc. And then lastly is it like the self, because actually so focused on them, making sure the team are organized, the kids are at school, the cars in the garage, etc. There's no time for the self at the end. Whereas in that process, there's all that conflict, there's late deadlines, there's disgruntledness, isn't there? Just kind of like, oh, hoo-ha. Whereas if we flip that round and we take care of ourselves as a center, actually then the team around us works much better, because we're not stressed. We're not panicking. We're in control. We know what we've got to do. We can delegate, and we can articulate, and we can communicate and do all those things. So the team's happy. And if the team are happy, the task will get done. So then for all the stuff that needs to be done will be done. But that has started with ourselves at the very, very core, and taking that moment. And I think I love that concept. Actually, if we radiate that outwards, then life doesn't have to be stressful. It doesn't have to be painful. It doesn't have to be hard. It can kind of flow, but it starts with us. It starts from within. Whether you're male, female, or whatever, in terms of that kind of just being, down-regulating and looking after yourself, and knowing who you are and what you need, and being okay with that. and then radiate it outwards. I think such a key concept that definitely kind of sings home to a lot of people.
Yeah, definitely. So much information in there. It's fantastic. And what I will do is get the names and web details for the couple of people that you've mentioned so that I can put that up. In terms of your services, so I know that you work with the criminal side of things, but also you work privately as well.
Do
services that you offer, well, men and women, but also have come from that background of really understanding from a first-hand, we've left it too late and everything's gone pop, collapse, like able to assist people before then. What are some of the services that you offer to be able to support and assist men?
A wide range, really. I said earlier, didn't I? I'm very much about the person. So the way I practice is that I meet people where they're at. So in terms of something's not sitting right, or noticing those signs, you know what? I'm just not happy to go home. I'm noticing I'm working more. I don't want to go home, or my wife's always nagging me, or or my partner's doing this and that and the other. That's the kind of indicators. It's like, I think we all have this knowledge, don't we, when something's not sitting right, and we don't want to necessarily admit it. So in terms of the services that I offer, it's that kind of support of going through and figuring it out. Like I always find that actually having that person who can just be completely objective, like I'm very much, what's it that say what you see, like it comes out. Like I'm not going to necessarily sugarcoat it. Also, I'm not cruel, but I think sometimes the truth is the truth, and you don't need to kind of misshape it in any other way. And actually having that directness to kind of be in a forum, whereas, do you know what? I am addicted to pornography, and this is the only place I can say it. Awesome, because you need to say it. Like, that's cool. This is a safe place. We don't talk about it anywhere else, but actually bring it here. Yes, let's explore it. Same with the relationships. You know what? I feel like this. I don't love her anymore. I don't love him anymore, and I don't know what to do. Awesome, bring it, because then we're going to figure it out. And whatever the answer is, that's not my decision. It's nothing to do with me. I'm the vehicle in some senses to guide you into whichever way you choose. And it's not anything more than your life and how you choose to live it, and exploring that to lead the best life that you can, to have the greatest human experience, I call it, that you can have. We're not here for that long. Have a human experience. That's going to be sometimes stressful, sometimes painful, sometimes joyous, sometimes absolutely glorious. But that's all the experience, and embracing it throughout that journey is kind of really fulfilling that. And in terms of skills, I mean, I do a lot of fitness, yoga, nutrition, have a belief in that kind of holistic approach. So yeah, looking at kind of the elements of what's your body telling you, what do we need to look at in your body to look at what you're eating, look at what supplements you're taking, look at what movement you're making, and all those kinds of things, really, in terms of managing disease states, managing like a fulfilling lifestyle, that you get everything you need and deserve, without sacrificing yourself for it, like without that persecuting mind that says I'm not worth it, or this happened when I was a child, so therefore no one will want me to do this now. And really fighting some of that deep and dark stuff, which is, yeah, absolutely, I love it. I love it. I love the results, absolutely. So yeah, that's me, really.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for that. And then
You're
finally,
welcome.
another question. So if there were three things, so you've mentioned about kind of breathing and how important that can be. So if there were three tools that you could send males away with, so regardless of the age, so what is one of the breath techniques that you found really helpful?
For a breath technique, I would probably go for a balanced breath, plain and simple. So a 4 in and a 4 out, just to find balance. We can do things to make ourselves kind of more excitatory, or we can do things to make ourselves more sedated for sleep. But sometimes we just need to be brought back to center, and then coming back to center, then we can go from the different angles. But if you're starting high, you need to come to balance. If you're starting low, you need to come to balance. So I think just doing a 4x4 breath definitely is the best place to start. Second thing would be, I would be going with something around identity and knowing who you are, which is really random. Not one I thought I would go with, but I have a real thing. I think it's so important that we know who we are. Like, not what people tell us we are, not the things that we've experienced or suffered or done, but who we actually are, so that we can walk in that true self of, sure, I don't like my job. Okay, I can't leave it right now, but I know I don't like it. So I can damn well look at something I can do to work towards so I can get out of it, because it's not serving me a purpose. So having that kind of real sense of self and really working on self-esteem and self kind of appreciation, really. And lastly, go on.
So in terms of that kind of knowing the self, is there like an activity or something that you've used and you're like, oh, this is a really good opportunity or way where you can begin and start to get to know yourself?
Oh, there's many. Probably as a basic start off, I always like to go back to a stickman standard in the middle of a page. And you can either put circles or not put circles, but essentially it's putting everything that's in your world. So the good and the bad, but identifying it. And then almost like you're putting it closer, how much more important it is to you, it's closer. And if it's on the periphery, like just like, the neighbour down the road who you might say hello to, but they make you smile, that might go on the end. Or if it's the gym that you go to every day and that's quite an important part of your life, goes quite closer. So really starting to identify everything that's in your world. And then that can progress into, like, essentially you're giving it a green flag, red flag, or maybe an amber as to, is it healthy for you? Like, I really like going to the pub, but I get drunk and I get into trouble every week, for example. Like, or it really impacts my partner because she doesn't want me to go to the pub every week. She'd like to spend some time with me. So whilst it's really important to me as a person, maybe it's on that yellow kind of area, because actually it does cause some conflict. So really starting to identify, what have I got in my life? What am I doing? What do I enjoy? What don't I enjoy? And how beneficial is it? How close does it sit to me? And then over time, the concept of that is actually the stuff that's the red starts to be kind of really put in with some green. So you tweak it a little bit here or tweak it a little bit there. And it either starts to move away if it doesn't serve a purpose, or it just starts to change colour so that actually it brings something more positive, less arguments, less conflict, and more kind of fulfillment. Yeah, that's a good task to do.
No, I think that, and also the thing that I would add to that is it's a great way to, whether it's a blank bit of paper or an A4 pad, is just getting it down, because actually that gives you that bird's eye view and perspective to go, well, what is it? And then even around there, I know that I've done some work and it was just like, well, what are the emotions? And I'm like, well, I don't know. And it's like, let me Google a whole list of words, and it's like, okay, well, which words resonate? So it's like that pub activity or whatever it is that you like doing, it's like, what do you get out of that? What does it give you that nurture? How does it nurture you? So as well as starting to put down, it's just like, what are the different things that I have to do, and what is in my world?
And that doesn't have to be all in one go either. It's quite a big task, and it's often when I say, like, start it, and as it pops in, just pop it down, and then you can go back and add like emotions, add colors and all the rest of it. But you mean it could be as massive as you want it to be, and over the course of time it really does change. But some of this is about not approaching it with any expectations or pressure on yourself. It's like, I'm just going to see what happens, and I've got no attachment to this. Just gonna have a go and see what comes of it. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Okay, cool. If it does, okay, cool. I'll do something with that. So, you know, like having that complete, like, meh, see what happens next.
Fact finding, data gathering.
Yeah, exactly.
Like playful, just going to see.
Yeah, exactly. No expectation.
Lovely.
Yeah, definitely.
And third one.
My third one is going to be movement of your body. So many benefits to movement, as you know, and especially it doesn't have to be what you think it has to be. And I think I'm an avid, I used to love, before lockdown, was in the gym all the time, and wouldn't, like, if I miss it, I thought, oh god, I feel like I should be doing something else. But if one thing COVID has taught us, actually, we can still do stuff. So walking is better than not walking. So you don't have to run 2 miles, 3 miles, 4 miles. You could just walk to the shop or park the car a little bit further and start to build things up. Or, you know, stretching is a big one though, isn't it? Moving the body, getting the fluid moving, and keeping your limbs and your muscles kind of strengthened and lengthened, if you like, so that as we get old gracefully, we don't start kind of thinking, oh, all this pain, and stop, you know, like the range of movements tend to get lost. So start it now, however old you are, get moving, get stretching, and yeah.
Definitely. That's fantastic. So I love those three. So in case you were like, what was the first one again? So the first one was breathing, and the second one was getting to know yourself, and then the third one was definitely movement. So key core ways to just start to just make changes. Thank you very much. That's been fascinating.
You're so welcome.
I hope everybody that's watched has enjoyed. What I will do is Crystal's contact details, website, etc. And the information to some of the people that she referred to will be at the end of this video. So if you want to take a note, then you can do that. So again, Crystal, thank you very much for joining us today and sharing with us your knowledge and experience.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. It's been fun.